going to talk a little bit about an ideal kind of setup of the mentor and mentee relationship. We'll sort of talk through some of this. How many people in the room really have a good primary mentor right now? Yeah, so most of you, but not everyone. So tell me, what is your mentor more in your topical area or more career? Both. So you have one for both or one person for both? Got it. One guy. Got it. Well, that's good, actually. That's helpful. Other people? More career model, right? Yeah, okay. So you'll see that sometimes you're going to need other people for the research, and we had talked about that a little bit with Tom here, actually, who's sounds like got a good mentor, but maybe not in the topical area for his K, where he's going to actually need a little bit more experience, right? So for clinical decision support, he's going to need somebody to mentor him through how to do clinical decision support, okay? So ask questions while we go, because if there's something that's not clear, I want you to be able to ask questions about things, and we'll just kind of move through, okay? So, come on. Of course, am I going to have a hard time with this now? Seems like it wants to go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'm not sure why this isn't working. Keynote is open. It does seem to be. Okay. So the goals, the first thing when figuring out a mentor relationship is that it needs to be mutually beneficial, right? So people are not going to be your mentor if it doesn't benefit them at all, right? There's some academic pieces to it that are helpful, right? But you're not going to get very good mentorship if it's not going to sort of help them a little bit. There's very few people that are completely benevolent and just want to train you to be a better person with nothing for themselves, right? So we talked a little bit about this. Sometimes there are topical mentors and sometimes there are career mentors. Sometimes there are both. It looks like she was able to have both in one single person, which is good. But again, you're not going to be able to kind of get everything you need in one single person very often, okay? So think about that and think about what the mentor is getting out of it, because again, the more your interests are aligned, the better it is for you, and you will be more effective together, right? So if you're working on the same project and they benefit because you're actually helping them finish a project, then guess what? Things are going to move forward because they're going to put all their resources to bear towards you getting your job done, right? Your project done. And so I'm going to have trouble with this, it looks like. Tied to this. So, talking through the best mentor and mentee relationships, really there's got to be beneficence and non-malfeasance. There needs to be some fidelity involved with this as well, right? So, essentially, this has got to be something in which they're not going to be sort of working with so many different mentees that they're not able to actually help support you, okay? So beware of people that are actually overburdened with too many mentees, and really talk to the people that you're, the other mentees there, because you want to see how those relationships have gone. Not everybody is going to actually work well together, and so you need to understand what that looks like a little bit. There's responsibility, and you need to actually keep each other accountable, right? So your mentor should be setting deadlines for you, right? Like saying, okay, you are going to do this, you're telling me you're going to do this, and when you are having your regular meetings, they should be holding you accountable, but then that means that you have to remain accountable, otherwise that's not going to work as well, right? So I'll tell you, with my graduate students, I absolutely sort of say, this is what I expect you to accomplish for the next month, and we check in on those things every month when we meet with them. Carly here is a medical student that actually came to rotate with us with our lab for a number of weeks, and we had these meetings and we said, okay, well, what are you going to accomplish and by when? And consequently, I think things were a little bit more effective, and she actually finished that rotation with something completed. Just basic integrity things, right? This seems simple, but, making sure to show up on time, be honest about what your capabilities are, right? Respectful, right? Like, these are all major things. This is essentially the way you would want to treat people in general, but really the mentor-mentee relationships are important, right? And you want to be kind of respected as a mentee. The other piece here is that it is inevitable that you will outgrow your mentor, and that's an okay thing, right? Because what you don't want to do is just work on this person's project forever and then never sort of give you your own project, right? So you want to see that people are able to transition out from that. I will say that, one of my best mentors early on in my career, Amy Zosel knows well, is somebody by the name of Kenan Hurd, who's a toxicologist, who's an MD, PhD guy. He was my, Amy and I's fellowship director when we were there. But I'll tell you what, now I don't actually work much, and I don't actually lean on him much for any of my science stuff, because he's just not doing that much anymore, and we've kind of grown apart as far as our scientific areas. But I still go to him every now and again for some of my career things. And that's what Kenan wants, right? Like, he wants to sort of say, yeah, I don't have to deal with him anymore because he's now been successful in this area, but I can still go back and kind of talk to him when I have questions. But realize that, like, you want to see that the mentor is actually setting their mentees free, right? Like, so when graduate students or junior residents are moving on, you don't want to see them working in the same lab on the same projects that they had when they were fellows, right? Like, that's a sign that maybe actually they're not as invested in you and more invested in their own project, right? So mentee responsibilities, is just very simple, right? Like, it's obvious, but like, when you show up, you got to tell them what you need out of that relationship. So is it career mentorship? Is it project mentorship? Is it sort of negotiating the kind of the politics of a particular site, right? Tell them what you need, and set agendas for these meetings too, right? Like, so I like when my graduate students show up and say, okay, this is the list of things I'm hoping to talk about, right? Like today, so that way we can go through those types of things. Ultimately, this is your career, right? So like, you actually have to make this work more than this person that's already established as a mentor. I have up here draft the letters of support. This is kind of new when I talk to more junior people when they're getting applications together, but this is an expectation, right? Like, it seems weird to write your own letters of support, but this is absolutely, expected. How many people have drafted their own letters of support so far? Good, most of you have. Good, I'm glad to hear it. Okay. Set the deadlines for yourself, and I think that this is all clear. Ask advice of your career mentors about these kind of politically charged experiences and situations. The reason for this is obvious, right? But the big thing here is that your mentors are going to have a lot more perspective on what's happened in the department and can give you other ways to approach these situations. So really ask about those types of things. And as I also said, you need to reevaluate these relationships regularly. So I think like once a year is a good time to say, okay, well, I've been meeting with this person every year. Am I still getting what I need out of it, or do I need to kind of shift away from career and more towards a project mentor? Especially at the end of projects, it's worth asking yourself those questions, but it absolutely is something you need to think about, because it doesn't make sense just to have meetings for no reason, right? Like, so reevaluate those things regularly. Mentor responsibilities, I think you have to be honest about what you're able to do and what you aren't. And so That's the other thing I really think is important. So when you come in and you say, I need a topical mentor in this particular area in clinical decision support, right? And I need them to be funded by this institute, they should be able to tell you, listen, I don't think I'm the right person for you because, and so you should ask those questions too. Do you think you can do this? If they're sort of hedging on that type of stuff, then it's probably not the right person for you, okay? I think in general, you should always be kind of getting your writing improved with these people. We always like go through, you guys all spend some time reading these AIMS pages. Your mentors should all be reading your AIMS pages over and over again and kind of cutting out the extra words and really refining those ideas. It's something that's really necessary as you go on with a mentor and mentee. Now, certain people are better writers than others, and so you may find somebody that's a better kind of writing mentor than your primary mentor, but I think that it's always worth kind of checking to see whether or not you're getting that from the mentor. Common misconceptions. There aren't enough emergency medicine research mentors. So this is just patently false, right? There may not be people right at your site, but there's tons of people here at this meeting. I'm sure even many of the people in this room, you know, Ralph is going to be a good mentor for some people here. There's plenty of people. Amy Zosel is the research director in Wisconsin, right? Like, she has got a lot to offer for people. There's a lot of people in emergency medicine that actually can be mentors, okay? The other misconception is that emergency mentors have to be in emergency medicine. Absolutely not, right? Like, people that do clinical decision tools are not necessarily all going to be in emergency medicine. I'll tell you, for my own K23 award, I reached out and I had a mentor that was a pharmacologist in pharmacogenomics at Mayo, right? So you have to make the relationship real. So what did I do? We set up monthly calls, and I went up there to see him, you know, in the first year, and we had him down for grand rounds during the second year of my K, right? Like, but every month we had an hour-long phone call, and we would sort of go through things, and he would sort of give me strategies around NIH and around pharmacogenomics and who I should be talking to, that type of stuff. I mean, somebody that was not at my institution, not in my specialty, you know, was a pharmacologist, you know, at a different institution. And of course, this is starting to die on me. There we go. So we just went through that. You know, again, another misconception is that you should only have one. I think we've already sort of talked through that, right? Like, it's very common for you to have more than one. And even different groups of mentors for different projects, I think, is also reasonable, right? I will say that my substance abuse work have different mentors than my pharmacogenomics work and my metabolomics work, right? Like, I've got different mentors in all of those areas, and I, you know, call them up when I'm putting in an application for one, you know, or kind of put them down when I'm not doing, you know, doing that particular project. So, however, for grant funding, you need a track record with them. Right? Like, this is actually easier to accomplish than you would think. But the easiest way to do this is by giving them manuscripts that you're writing and having them contribute, and then thus being co-authors on those manuscripts, right? So each one of you should be thinking about writing a review article on whatever grant you're putting in, because it's a simple publication. You got to do the work anyway, because you're going to need that for the background of your grant, right? So whatever mentors you have should be on that publication, because it's simple. They're going to read through it. They should theoretically have some expertise in the area. They can provide you some feedback, and that's a publication with your mentors. Perfect, simple, right? Similar things like letter to the editors. Those are simple things that you can add them to. You know, it's not that hard, but you absolutely need to have some sort of track record with them. And it's generally more than just, hey, look, I went to residency with this person, or they were my fellowship director, right? Like, that's okay, but that's actually doesn't demonstrate productive academic collaboration. So what is a productive academic collaboration? It's completing projects and getting publications, right? So that's where the easiest way to do that is. You know, you have to put in the effort to make it work. As I said, right? Like I had a couple of different mentors on my career development award. I had to make it work to go up there once during my K application to actually spend a little bit of time up there and learn about what they were doing. I had to actually make sure to send out invites to have this call every month, right? Like it takes effort, right? Like it really does take some effort, but I'm much richer because of it, right? And we already talked about kind of growing along. So I've got some papers here, and this is something that you're going to work on a little bit over lunch, and it's just the timeline for success. So what I want each person in the room to do is think about, okay, what's one of your objectives, something that you're going to actually try and accomplish over a longer period of time, and I'm going to start to pass these out. Carly, would you mind giving me a hand just breaking these up while I take people through the rest? Thank you so much. So what you're going to do with this mentor is that, like, if your goal is to have a K application in 2 years, right? You're going to take this thing, like, how do you eat a bear one bite at a time, right? Like, this is what we're talking about. So what you're going to do is you're going to come through and you're going to say, okay, what do I need to have accomplished at 1 year from now in order to actually make this work, right? You're going to start to actually go down here. You're going to say, I'm going to have actually the grant submitted, right? I'm going to have the team assembled. I'm going to have somewhere between 5 and 15 publications, 3 to 4 topical presentations on the area that I can talk about when I'm talking about my, what I've done in the field, right? 6 months, you're going to say, I need a couple of abstracts with these mentors, right? Perhaps you're going to have 1 publication with your primary mentor and a pilot study completed. You're going to come down to 3 months from now. You're going to plan these things. You're going to actually have the review article published, start the pilot study, which means that this week you're going to actually have to get the IRB in, right? And so you can break this thing down by figuring out what the timeline is for these things and then determine whether or not your timeline is realistic by going through it in this way, right? So I actually use this on a semi-regular basis still in my career because I think that when I'm thinking about these more longer-term kind of jobs and projects, it's hard to kind of get your head around what actually has to be done this week in order to be productive long-term. So I find that this is a really good exercise to go through. So pick your topic and figure out what it is that you got to do this week before even the end of this meeting. And perhaps it is meeting a mentor that you want to have on your application.